The stars over New Geneva shimmered like a frozen sea of diamonds, untouched and indifferent. Dr. Alara Miles stood at the edge of the skyport's observation deck, hands resting on the cold metal rail, staring into that indifferent sky. 32 years of working in deep orbital sciences, and she still felt like an ant staring into infinity. But tonight was different. Tonight, the stars stared back. The contact had come without warning. No gravitational ripples, no subspace chatter, not even the courtesy of a light-speed signature. One moment, the Kuiper Belt was just a lonely string of ice and dust. The next, a vessel the size of Manhattan materialized just beyond Pluto's shadow. The world froze. Satellites tumbled offline. Every nation turned their antennas outward and held its breath. Within 72 hours, the Galactic Empire's emissary landed in Earth's orbit. Their ship, sleek, obsidian, and utterly silent, ignored all communication protocols. It simply hovered, as if waiting for Earth to catch up. Alara remembered the broadcast clearly. The emissary identified itself as Veil Zur, a high liaison of the Empire's Outer Expansion Directorate. Humanoid, tall, with skin like burnished chrome and eyes of soft violet light. Zur's appearance was calculated, just alien enough to impress, just familiar enough to soothe. His voice, translated through Earth's quantum receivers, was low and melodic. "We come not as conquerors, but as stewards," he said. "Your world stands on the threshold. Let us guide you through the gate." That sentence split the world in two. For governments, it was a geopolitical puzzle with no pieces. For corporations, it was a gold rush. For religions, a reckoning. And for Alara, it was a beginning of something she'd been dreading since her student days at the University of Marsport. The moment humanity would no longer be alone, and perhaps never be sovereign again. The first meetings were held aboard the Empire's vessel. Only a select few were allowed inside: scientists, diplomats, linguists. Alara, as head of Earth Orbital Science Council, was among them. She remembered the ship's interior. Corridors that shifted subtly when one wasn't looking, materials that absorbed light but shimmered like velvet, and the hum, an ever-present low frequency that resonated more in the bones than the ears. Veil Zur welcomed them with a smile that never reached his eyes. He spoke of the Empire's vast network of planetary alliances, of galactic trade, knowledge sharing, and enlightenment. But Alara couldn't shake the feeling that Earth was not being invited. It was being assessed. Back on Earth, debates erupted. President Naomi al-Rashid urged cooperation, believing Earth's future lay in alliance. But General Carter Wren, commander of the Terran Defense Coalition, wasn't so optimistic. "When a superior force offers peace without terms, look closer," he said during a UN Council broadcast. "You may already be under occupation." And then there was Sarah Miles, Alara's daughter. At 26, Sarah had already become a rising voice in the global youth movement against assimilation. "We don't need a cosmic babysitter," she said in one of her viral streams. "What we need is time to grow on our terms." The Empire didn't knock. They walked in. Their last argument before Sarah left for the New Asia protest was still fresh in Alara's memory. "You're too close to them," Sarah had accused. "Too awed to see what they're doing. And you're too young to see what they're offering," Alara had snapped. Neither of them said goodbye that night. 2 months after the emissary's arrival, the first gifts began. The Empire deployed nanostructure repair swarms in Earth's failing cities. Cairo's floods reversed in a day. Mumbai's smog lifted in hours. Disease-resistant crops appeared in sub-Saharan soil. An artificial moon was launched to provide energy to off-grid regions. It was dazzling, efficient, unquestioned. But the gifts came with observers, Empire coordinators who shadowed every installation, collected data, and advised on improved protocols. At first, they were politely tolerated, then quietly resented. No human knew how the machines worked. No one could replicate or repair them without the Empire's help. Dependency tightened like a golden noose. Alara kept working, kept translating data streams from orbit, kept attending the joint research symposiums aboard the Empire's craft. And all the while, she kept wondering, was this how it began for every world in the Empire's path? 3 weeks before the ban, an incident occurred at Europa Station. a scientific outpost co-run by Earth and the Empire. The feed cut out mid-transmission. No distress signal. No survivors. Veils claimed an internal malfunction. But leaked footage showed armored figures boarding the human module. The incident was swiftly buried, and the footage discredited by Empire spokesman. But Alara saw it. She saw Sarah in that footage. Sarah, now part of a covert Terran resistance unit, had infiltrated the Empire's communication grid. "They don't plan to leave," she said in a coded message intercepted by Earth's DeepNet. "We're not allies. We're a case study." The final straw came not from governments, nor generals, but from people. Protests ignited across continents. Empire outposts were vandalized, coordinators shunned. For the first time, humanity acted as one voice, not out of fear, but fury. In an emergency session at the UN Stellar Council, broadcast billions, President al-Rashid stood and addressed the galaxy. "Earth is not a node in your network. We are not a hatchling to be nursed. We are not a question to be solved. We are a sovereign species, and your presence is no longer welcome." The ban was unanimous. Within hours, the Empire's ships began retreating from Earth's atmosphere. But not all of them left. Alara stood again on the observation deck, now watching the twilight trail of the departing vessel. Sarah was still missing. Her last message had ended with coordinates. Earth's dark side, a stretch of sky near Enceladus. Alara, a voice said behind her. It was Ren, eyes shadowed, voice low. "We're tracking a signal. It matches Sarah's code." Alara didn't respond. She was already moving, the stars no longer silent, the sky no longer hers, but the fire in her chest was entirely human. The Empire had come. They had offered peace with velvet hands. And Earth had said no, but the story wasn't over. Not yet. The silence after the ban was not peace. It was a loaded pause, like the moment before a storm breaks. Earth's skies were clear of the Empire's vessels, but their influence had not evaporated. Their tech still hummed beneath cities. Their synthetic advisors still lingered in remote corners. And their absence, Alara realized, was as loud as their presence had ever been. General Carter Wren called it the recoil. Systems powered by Empire nanogrid began failing. Artificial ecosystems in equatorial regions destabilized. Communication satellites, once seamlessly integrated with Empire relays, lagged, blinked out, or reactivated under foreign control. Earth had pulled the plug, but the cords were still tangled in its spine. Alara Miles returned to her post at Skirich Lab, high above the Pacific. She had expected de-escalation. What she found instead was escalation in silence. Every hour, new anomalies poured in. Power surges in the stratosphere, gravity ripples near orbital lanes, brief wormhole flickers on lunar sensors. All signs of ongoing Empire surveillance. "Ghost signals," her assistant said nervously. "No," she replied. "They're not ghosts. They're warnings." While the world's public believed in the myth of departure, those in command knew better. The Empire hadn't left. They'd simply stepped back, reshaping the battlefield. And somewhere in that shadow war, Alara's daughter was still missing. Sarah's signal reappeared briefly, in a secured channel routed through a decommissioned satellite. For seconds of sound. Her voice, distorted but unmistakable. "They're here, watching. Not all of them left. Deep orbit, inside EarthNet." Then silence. Carter Wren called for an immediate investigation. He summoned his command circle in an underground chamber beneath Iceland's basalt cliffs, one of the few secure bunkers still off-grid. Alara stood among military minds and analysts, an outsider pulled back into the fold not for her loyalty, but for her connection. "They embedded something," Wren said, pacing before projection of low-orbit schematics. "Code. Tech. People we don't know. But they planned for this response. They wanted the ban." "You think they wanted rejection?" Alara asked. "I think they want to provoke independence, then use the resulting instability as proof we need them." The first overt act of Empire subterfuge came days later, disguised as a corporate merger. A major Earth-based biotech firm, Genova, announced it had partnered with an off-world investor group to resume terraforming operations on Titan. But buried in the documentation were old Empire codes, ownership tags that matched ships known to belong to the Outer Expansion Directorate. By the time the Terran Security Coalition traced the funds, the company's assets had vanished. The Empire was laundering influence through human institutions. Invisible occupation. In retaliation, Earth's cyber units began scouring the planet's infrastructure for signs of embedded Empire systems. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. Empire-designed nanites, too small for human-made sensors, too complex to deconstruct, were discovered in water purification systems, atmospheric regulation towers, and even in human neural interface implants. The Empire hadn't just offered gifts. They'd sown seeds of control, linked by a signal no longer actively transmitted, but still present in low-band energy fields. Sarah's warning became prophecy. Ilera pushed harder than ever, leading a team to reverse-engineer the Empire's neural mesh. But even as they uncovered the framework, new layers revealed themselves: self-masking codes, defensive scripts, adaptive logic loops. It wasn't technology. It was biology written in machine language. Alive, watching. Then came the massacre. Europa Station, reconstructed under human control, suffered a catastrophic breach. Official reports claimed an accident in the airlock system, but Ilera had seen enough anomalies to know what sabotage looked like. She accessed a restricted feed, relayed from one of Earth's new black satellites, an asset not even Ren knew existed. The footage showed figures, tall, armored, their skin dark and iridescent, boarding the station with precise, predatory calm. They weren't soldiers. They were collectors. They executed no one. They took samples. Personnel vanished. Instruments gone. Whole data cores removed with surgical precision. Ilera showed the footage to Ren. He didn't flinch. They never left, he murmured. No, she said. They just went quiet. The world grew tense. Protests turned to riots. Cities once saved by the Empire's technology now saw it as a curse. Coordinators who had remained, hiding as advisors or consultants, were dragged from labs and deported, or worse. And still, no declaration from the Empire. No retaliation. Just a silence more threatening than any assault. Desperate for leverage, Ren authorized the formation of an independent network. The Bastion Protocol, a series of orbital relays, AI-driven, disconnected from all known Empire systems. Built by humans, for humans. Ilera helped design the encryption, her penance, perhaps, for allowing the Empire's tech in the first place. But the moment the network came online, something happened. All sensors in the upper ionosphere went dead. The blackout lasted 6 minutes. When systems returned, several Bastion nodes were offline, burned out from inside, and one new signal appeared. Coordinates, high orbit, unclaimed. Ren was the first to suspect a trap. Ilera disagreed. It's her, she said. It's Sarah. Despite objections, she boarded the mission herself, an unarmed probe skimming the edge of the signal's location. As the craft pierced orbit, it encountered a field of debris, metal twisted into spirals, charred fragments of machines. But at the center, a beacon, pulsing red, coded in Empire syntax, layered over human signal patterns. Inside it, a message fragment. Sarah's face flickered, glitching. They're not unified, she said. They're factions, rebels. They helped me send this. Empire is fracturing. That word rippled through the chamber back on Earth, like a thunderclap. Fracturing. The monolith had cracks. Ren's War Council met again. If the Empire was splintering, Earth had a chance. Not to defeat them, but to break their influence. To resist on a scale the Empire had never faced. But as Ilera watched the projection of her daughter's flickering face, she knew it wasn't over. Sarah was still out there, somewhere between the stars and the Empire's fractured loyalties. And Earth, still wounded, still reeling, stood on a precipice between two futures, one of resistance and one of ruin. There was no going back. The band was just the first line drawn in a war's shadows. And the shadows were moving. The tribunal chamber floated in synchronous orbit over Earth, a crystalline arc suspended above the clouds, lit by the slow-turning sun. Its construction had been a gesture of unity years ago, a collaboration between Earth's planetary governments and the Galactic Empire during what had been optimistically called a convergence initiative. Now, that same chamber had been repurposed for something far colder, a trial, not of a person, but of an entire civilization. President Omi Al-Rashid stood at the center of the chamber's core, framed by a ring of interstellar delegates. Her expression was unreadable, her posture rigid with the weight of a species behind her. She had not slept. The past month had been a blur of emergency sessions, intercepted transmissions, and buried threats rising to the surface like oil and water. Earth had not only banned the Empire from its orbit, but had now taken the unprecedented step of formally charging it with technological subjugation and covert colonization. Opposite her stood Veil-Zur. The Empire's emissary looked unchanged, as if time or tension had no purchase on him. His violet eyes reflected the chamber's cold lights, and the polished planes of synthetic skin made him seem less like a man and more like a sculpture of diplomacy carved by machine. "You claim victimhood," Zur said, his voice calm, almost condescending. "Yet we offered peace. Your species asked for help. We gave you survival. You called it control." Al-Rashid's voice was steady. "You embedded surveillance in our water. You erased a generation of neuroprivacy. You abducted our citizens. That is not help. That is conquest dressed in velvet." The chamber did not erupt. These were not politicians given to applause or protest. They were observers from the Glorian Accord, from the Sauve Clade, even from the old, reclusive Saran Communion. Many had seen the Empire's methods unfold on other worlds. Some had turned a blind eye. Others, Earth now realized, had been watching and waiting for someone to speak aloud what they only dared whisper. Behind the curtain of formality, Earth's legal team scrambled to present evidence. The files Sarah had transmitted before her capture were central to the case. Extracted communications between Empire agents discussing neural manipulation protocols. Schematics of black site labs where abductees had been studied. A log of human resource extractors, vessels coded for non-consensual biological assessment. But for all the evidence laid bare, the Empire denied nothing. "We evolved beyond conquest millennia ago," Zur said in his closing argument. "What you perceive as domination is simply your species confronting its own limitations." Illyra Miles watched from a restricted console chamber, one level below the trial floor. She was not a diplomat, nor a stateswoman, but the tribunal had agreed to let her testify on the final day. Her perspective, as both one of Earth's leading scientists and the mother of a missing resistance operative, held symbolic weight. She reviewed her statement for the 5th time, but her mind kept returning to the latest signal fragment. A heartbeat pulse, human in pattern, embedded inside Empire code. Sarah was alive. Somewhere, someone in the Empire wanted her to remain that way. The tribunal was never meant to deliver justice. Earth's delegation understood that. It was a theater of power, less about verdicts and more about shaping narrative. Still, the pressure mounted when one of the Sauve delegates, a crystal-bodied entity whose species communicated in pulses of light, sent a signal of partial alliance, a vote of sympathy. Then came the bombshell. A rogue ambassador from the Arwell-Kesh Confederacy submitted a classified Empire memorandum, stolen from a now-defunct expansion bureau. It confirmed that the Empire had seeded at least 12 developing civilizations with dependency systems under the guise of aid. Earth had been one of many. The initiative, referred to internally as the Spiral Doctrine, had been paused after several civilizational collapses. Illyra read the memo in stunned silence. The Empire had been playing the same game across the stars. Earth had simply shouted first. Within hours, the tribunal fractured. Some delegates demanded a wider investigation into all of the Empire's planetary relations. Others argued that Earth's independence threatened the fragile peace of the spiral arm. Whispers of sanctions circled. The Empire's once invincible image was cracking under 1,000 microscopic pressures. That night, in the privacy of her assigned chamber, Illyra received a secure message, origin encrypted through 7 dead satellites, then relayed via deep orbital relay. The voice was Sarah's, urgent and unfiltered. "Don't let them vote," she said. "They're preparing a fallback. If they lose the tribunal, they'll escalate, not with war, with collapse. They'll trigger a coordinated failure of every system they touched. Water, air, comms. Everything. Wren confirmed the warning a few hours later. Earth's defense grid had registered low-frequency pings sent from dormant Empire drones embedded in meteorological equipment. Triggers. Time code. A dead man switch. Al-Rashid canceled the final vote. Instead, she invoked the Sovereign Protocol, a clause passed hastily after the initial ban. It allowed Earth to sever all technological links with the Empire, initiate data purges, dismantle shared architecture, and deploy a defense lattice of Earth design systems. It was not a verdict. It was a wall. The chamber responded with silence. Then, one by one, some delegates stood, not to object, but to observe. Quietly, without acknowledgement, they withdrew from the tribunal. Earth had made its stand. Now it would face the consequences alone. Veil-Zur was the last to speak. Fate favors those who adapt, he said, as if speaking to Alara directly. You are no longer our concern, but neither are you beyond our reach. Then he stepped into the Empire's retrieval corridor and vanished. Earth's skies changed that day, not physically, but perceptually. Every satellite beam, every atmospheric shift was now suspect. Trust was currency, and Earth had spent all of it for freedom. Wren initiated Project Hearthline, a restructuring of planetary systems into closed-loop, unhackable frameworks. Alara returned to her lab, building encryption so deep it couldn't be read even by human eyes. And far above them, in the void between worlds, a signal blinked on again. Sarah, still alive, still transmitting, still defying the Empire. Alara placed her hand on the cold glass of her observatory window and whispered, not to the sky, but to the one person who refused to be swallowed by it. I'm coming. The war had not ended, but Earth had drawn its line. The cold breath of deep space offered no sound, only stillness, a silence that swallowed even memory. Sarah Miles floated just above the hull of the derelict Empire vessel, tethered by a single magnetic line and the dwindling oxygen of her exosuit. The stars spun around her like patient witnesses, and below her the ship, half shattered, leaking radiation, humming faintly, held the answers Earth needed. It had taken months to find her. Alara's transmissions, layered with signal cloaking and quantum echoes, had finally breached the Empire's fragmented comm grid. Sarah had responded with data packets disguised as starflare anomalies, delicate pulses masked in solar noise. Enough to trace. Enough to risk a rescue. Now, Alara sat at the helm of Vigilant Horizon, an unmarked Earth stealth vessel operating beyond the Terran exclusion line. She had defied orders, broken treaties, and overridden Wren's final directive. If Sarah was the key to stopping the Empire's final retaliation, no wall would keep her from reaching her daughter. Approach Vector Stable, the pilot whispered. 90 seconds to breach. Alara adjusted her visor, eyes fixed on the drifting wreckage ahead. The Empire's ship was an outlier, an old intelligence collector, presumed destroyed after the tribunal. But Sarah had found it. More importantly, she had survived within it, and that meant the truth it carried might still be intact. The boarding team moved with surgical precision. No lights, no EM bursts, just plasma torches cutting through the scorched bulkhead. The interior smelled of ozone and rusted alien metal. Half of the ship's AI nodes were dead, their cores melted by the same pulse that had killed its trans-warp drive. The rest flickered in stasis, locked in feedback loops of corrupted logic. Sarah emerged from the shadows near the central archive chamber, gaunt but standing. Her eyes were sharper than Alara remembered, eyes that had seen the quiet brutality of Empire betrayal, and refused to look away. They turned on each other, Sarah said, leading her mother deeper into the ship. The fracture wasn't just political. It was biological. Something changed in their code. Alara listened, absorbing every word as they moved past the ruined interface panels, each scorched with blast marks from internal conflict. They evolved too fast, Sarah continued. Split into factions, originalists, who wanted to preserve their genetic templates, and the adaptive ring, who began rewriting themselves. It escalated. The ship was caught in the purge. And you? Alara asked, voice low. I hid in the neural archives. They didn't care about the human anymore. The data core sat at the heart of the vessel, encased in an obsidian sphere lined with filigree circuits. Sarah connected her neural link, eyes fluttering as she bridged into the Empire's last broadcast from this node. Illyra watched the feed unfold. A meeting of commanders, their voices fragmented by time and radiation. The message was clear. Earth had passed the test. The spiral doctrine hadn't been about domination. Not entirely. It had been a pressure trial, a way to sift through developing civilizations and find those capable of resisting systemic assimilation. The ban Earth issued had triggered a hidden evaluation protocol. Earth had been measured, judged, and marked as autonomous viable. But the price was high. The Empire's final plan had been one of withdrawal, yes, but also of sabotage. Those who failed would be left hollow, with systems collapsing under the weight of unseen dependencies. Those who passed would be left alone, but watched. This changes nothing, Wren said later, when the feed was decrypted and played back on Earth's highest secure channel. They still poison our planet, still used us. But it changes everything, Illyra countered. They didn't expect us to win. We did. The data Sarah recovered wasn't just a message. It was a library. Coordinates of Empire sites abandoned mid-conflict. Records of other civilizations who passed, or failed. And somewhere in that list, allies, scattered stars that had also resisted. Project Emberline was born from that seed, a covert initiative to locate those other autonomous civilizations. Not to form an alliance, not yet, but to learn, to grow without the Empire's shadow. To step, finally, into the galaxy as something more than prey. Sarah declined every debriefing. She refused awards. She returned to the mountains of Arcadia Sector and vanished into the cold winds, saying only that she needed silence. Illyra understood. The world had changed. Slowly, quietly. Nations once divided by borders now collaborated on planetary defense architecture. The Bastion Protocol became the foundation for every new system. Coded in open source, devoid of Empire DNA. Cities were rebuilt, free of alien scaffolding. Water ran clean. Skies were unmonitored, but scars remained. People remembered the years of quiet compliance, of trading autonomy for comfort. They remembered the orbiting lights above their cities, the hum of foreign minds inside their own. Still, Earth endured, and in that endurance, something sacred returned, agency. One night, under the starlit canopy of the Aurora Expanse, Illyra stood with Wren, watching the launch of Earth's first fully independent deep-range vessel. No Empire tech, no legacy systems, just human minds and metal aimed at the unknown. "They'll come back," Wren said quietly. Illyra nodded. "And next time we'll be ready." She thought of Sarah, alone somewhere in the highlands, listening to the wind. She thought of the Empire, fractured but still vast, watching, waiting, adapting. And then she looked up, not in fear, but in certainty. They had been banned. But Earth had been reborn,